My sister's kid looked at my daughter and said, "Mom says you don't belong at this table." The room laughed. I grabbed my coat, took my girl's hand and left. Hours later, my sister texted, "Remember the mortgage transfer?" I replied, "You deserve something else." By 9 a.m. she was at my door, red-faced, screaming. There's a moment in life when someone looks you dead in the face and tells you, without saying a word, that you don't belong. For me, it happened at a dinner table in a room full of people who were supposed to be my family. It was a Saturday. Rachel had invited us for dinner. Us meaning me and my daughter, Emma. She'd phrased it like an olive branch after months of silence. Said Mom missed us, that Dad wanted to see Emma. I knew better than to trust the timing, but I let Emma pick out a dress and we drove across town anyway. Rachel's house always looks staged. White furniture. Neatly stacked books she's never read. She opened the door and gave me the air kiss routine, said Emma was getting so tall, then disappeared before I could respond. That was Rachel's way. Half gestures. Polished performances. My parents were already there, helping in the kitchen like they were prepping for some suburban awards ceremony. Dinner started off stiff. My dad poured wine only for himself and Rachel. My mom was too busy praising the mashed cauliflower to ask me how I'd been. Emma stayed close to me, asking little questions under her breath about what fork to use and if it was okay to skip the sweet potatoes. I smiled through it all until the moment that broke everything. Ava, Rachel's 10-year-old, was sitting across from Emma. She picked at her food, looked up with that same smugness her mother wears, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Mom says you don't belong at this table." The silence that followed was maybe 2 seconds long, but it felt like my chest collapsed in that space. Then came the laughter. My dad did a short little chuckle. My mom gave this half-hearted, "Oh, Ava." Rachel smirked, not even pretending to be embarrassed. I looked at Emma. She didn't understand why people were laughing. She didn't laugh. She looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. I stood up, took Emma's hand, grabbed our coats. No one stopped us. No one said a word as we walked out the door and back into the cold. I didn't even close the door behind me. Emma was quiet in the car, but at one red light she whispered, "Why did Ava say that?" I told her the truth. That sometimes people let their hurt speak through their children. We got home. I made popcorn and let her stay up watching cartoons. I sat at the table staring at my phone, trying to talk myself down. Then Rachel's text came. "Remember the mortgage transfer?" No apology. No context. Just that. Years ago, when Rachel and her husband were trying to get approved for their house, their credit wasn't enough. I had savings, steady job, a clean record. So I put my name on a portion of the mortgage and helped them seal the deal. It was supposed to be short-term, just until they stabilized. That was 4 years ago. I stared at the message for maybe 10 minutes. I wrote back one sentence. "You deserve something else." At 9 o'clock the next morning she was banging on my door. No makeup, red-faced, still in her slippers. Screaming about how I was punishing her kids, how I was blowing things out of proportion, how she needed this, how I had no idea what it was like to have a real family to support. I didn't open the door. I stood behind it and listened, then walked back into the kitchen and made pancakes for Emma. I realized right then, I had built my entire adult life being the reliable one. The one who answered calls at midnight. The one who lent money without conditions. The one who never got invited, only expected. And now I was done. They wanted to laugh at my daughter. Let them. They'd be crying soon enough. Rachel didn't call again that day. Neither did my parents. I thought maybe they were sitting together, huddled around her kitchen island, talking about how dramatic I'd become. That's usually how it worked. Rachel caused the mess and I became the story. That night I got a voicemail from my dad. I didn't answer when he called. I stood at the sink, listening to Emma in the other room, her little laugh echoing from the TV. I pressed play. He started with that tone. The one where he sounds calm but he's winding up to tell you how disappointed he is. He said Ava was just a child. That I should have known better than to react like that. That everyone laughs at kids sometimes. And then the part that made my fingers curl. "You know, Rachel has a lot on her plate. You could have shown some grace." That was it. That was always it. Rachel, the exhausted mom with 2 kids and a husband and a house to run. Me. Just Lisa. 1 child. A job they didn't understand. A life that didn't fit their checklist. No one asked what it was like to raise Emma alone. To budget everything down to the last dollar. To go to school functions and sit alone in the crowd while other moms swap daycare stories. To work until 2 a.m. on campaigns just so my name could matter in meetings full of men in suits. I didn't call him back. Instead, I opened my laptop and started what would be the beginning of all of it. I emailed the mortgage company. Told them I was no longer interested in holding partial ownership. I explained the situation. They replied the next day and said Rachel would have to refinance. She'd need to qualify on her own. I knew she wouldn't be able to. I knew her husband had switched jobs twice last year. But I was done being the safety net. I stopped responding in the family group chat. Rachel kept posting curated little updates. Ava's piano recital, Noah's honor roll certificate, her kitchen decorated for Valentine's Day. My mom commented on everyone with heart emojis. Meanwhile, Emma and I started building something quieter but more real. I took her to the coast for a weekend. She collected seashells while I read on the sand. We laughed more in those 3 days than I had in years of family dinners. Then came Christmas. My mom called me every day the week leading up to it. Left long voicemails about how this season is about healing, and family is more important than pride. She never once mentioned Ava's comment. Never once acknowledged that anything was wrong. I didn't go. Rachel posted a family photo that night. Everyone around the table dressed in red and gold. My dad carving a turkey. My mom holding Ava on her lap. The caption said, "Some people understand what being a family really means." Emma saw it. I didn't realize she had my phone. She looked at it for a second then just handed it back to me. She didn't say anything. But something in her face changed. She was growing up fast. Too fast. That night while she was asleep, I pulled out the box of baby clothes I'd kept from when she was born. I don't even know why I'd held onto them so long. Maybe because part of me had always wondered if there'd be a second. If life would ever make space for one more. In January, I heard through a friend that Rachel's husband had lost his biggest client. Money was tight. Their car got repossessed. She didn't tell me directly, of course, but I saw the signs. Her social media turned quieter. No more perfect coffee mugs or holiday crafts. Then came the call from the mortgage company. Rachel had requested a pause on payments. They wanted to confirm with me. I said no. The next Saturday, Rachel showed up at my apartment. She knocked like she had every right. This time I let her in. She looked worn down. Her hair was tied back, eyes swollen like she hadn't slept. She started off acting civil, asked about Emma. Sat on my couch like nothing had happened. Then came the ask. She wanted me to keep the mortgage the way it was. Said she and Brad just needed a little more time. That the kids were already stressed enough. That this wasn't the time to punish each other. I listened. And when she was done, I told her the truth. I said she was right. Ava was right. We didn't belong at the same table. She froze. Then snapped. Called me bitter. Accused me of being jealous. Said I was making everything harder than it had to be. And I lost it. I slapped her. Not hard. But enough. Enough to break whatever illusion she still had that I was the same Lisa from before. The convenient one. The one who quietly endured. Rachel screamed at me and slammed the door on her way out. 2 days later my mom called. She didn't yell. She didn't plead. She just said flatly, "You went too far. We're done with this." They chose her. And that was fine. Because I was already carrying something new. Something none of them knew about yet. I was pregnant. And this time I'd be doing it on my terms. I found out I was pregnant exactly 8 days after my parents disowned me. It was a quiet morning. Emma was still asleep, and the apartment smelled like cinnamon from the candle I'd left burning overnight. I hadn't been feeling well all week. Headaches, waves of nausea, crying at commercials, all things I tried to write off as stress. It wasn't until I reached for a tampon and realized I couldn't remember my last period that the math started doing itself in my head. The test turned positive faster than I expected. I stared at the little screen on the bathroom counter, not even sure how I felt. It wasn't planned. It didn't come at the right time. But after everything that had happened, after being told for years that I wasn't living the right kind of life, this felt like something solid. Quietly powerful. I didn't tell Rachel. I didn't tell my parents. They didn't deserve to know. The only ones I told were Melanie, my closest friend since college, and Aunt June, my mom's estranged sister, the one person in the family who never judged me for being different. Melanie screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. June just said, "Good. This baby will grow up around truth, not performance." For the first time in a long time I started putting myself first. I deleted the family group chat. Blocked Rachel's number. I changed my locks. I unsubscribed from anything that reminded me of them. Even Rachel's passive-aggressive Pinterest blog. Emma and I slipped into our own rhythm. I let her pick the baby's nickname for now. She called it Peanut. We started planning out how to rearrange the second bedroom. She made drawings of the baby every day, sometimes giving it wings, sometimes a crown. I didn't correct her. At night, I read parenting books while she slept next to me, her hand resting on my belly like she already knew. Meanwhile, the cracks in Rachel's perfect life were spreading. I wasn't looking for updates, but people love to talk, especially when something shiny starts rusting. A neighbor of hers called me by mistake, then tried to gossip about Rachel's missed payments. I didn't engage. I didn't have to. By early March, Rachel's husband had lost his second client. The house they couldn't really afford in the first place was hanging by threads. I got a voicemail from a mortgage officer. Apparently Rachel was trying to freeze payments. She hadn't told them I'd already submitted a formal request to be removed from the loan. I told them to continue. My dad called next. I didn't save his new number, but I recognized his voice immediately. He asked how I could do this to Rachel. Told me she was suffering. That Ava and Noah didn't understand why things were so tense at home. Then he said it again. That line that always told me where I stood. She did everything right. You're punishing the wrong people. I didn't even respond. I just hung up. 2 days later I got a letter from my mother. 3 pages, handwritten. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask how I was. She said I'd let bitterness rot me from the inside. She told me I had always been difficult. That I'd never understood what it meant to be a real woman. Her exact words, real women don't isolate their children. They raise them in a family. I tore the letter up. By April I'd found a new OB. Melanie came with me to the first appointment. I heard the heartbeat. Emma drew it on a sticky note and taped it above my desk. A red swirl with a smiley face. I started sleeping better. Eating better. Working smarter, not harder. My boss offered to let me transition to remote full-time. For once I wasn't chasing approval. I was creating peace. Then one Tuesday evening I heard a knock on my door. She was thinner than I remembered. Eyes heavy. She looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. I didn't invite her in. She stood in the hallway, hands stuffed in the sleeves of her hoodie. Said she didn't expect me to talk to her. Said she knew she'd ruined everything. She'd lost the house. Brad was staying with his brother. The kids were asking questions she didn't know how to answer. She looked up at me and then at my stomach. You're pregnant. I didn't say yes. I didn't need to. She already knew. She started crying. Not performative tears. Real ones. Said she was sorry for the dinner. For Ava. For all of it. She said I had every right to walk away. Then she said the one thing that actually surprised me. I was jealous. Of how free you were. I didn't say anything. I didn't hug her. I didn't invite her inside. She left quietly. That night I sat on the floor in the nursery to be and stared at Emma's crayon drawings taped to the wall. I felt calm. So, they thought I needed them. That I'd come crawling back. That I was weak. But I was already building something stronger. And none of them even knew the best part was still coming. I didn't hear from Rachel for almost a month after she left my door in tears. That silence should have felt satisfying, like a small victory, but instead it just confirmed what I already knew. She wasn't used to owning her messes unless someone else cleaned them first. So I moved on. The pregnancy was smooth. I was in my 2nd trimester and finally starting to show. Emma loved it. She kept her hand on my belly every night like she was guarding the baby from bad dreams. I caught her one morning whispering to it, promising she'd teach it how to ride a bike and not to worry about people being mean, like Ava was that time. I never corrected her. She wasn't wrong. Then, on a Thursday morning in mid-April, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, then played it while getting ready. It was my mom. Her voice was different, slower, like she was choosing her words carefully for the first time in her life. She said she and my dad had been seeing a therapist for the past few weeks. That they'd been unpacking some things. That maybe, just maybe, they hadn't treated me fairly. I let the message sit on my phone for 2 days before I listened to it again. She called back Saturday and asked if they could come by. No pressure, she said. We just want to see you. And Emma. I said yes. I don't even know why. Maybe to prove to myself that I wasn't the angry one anymore. Or maybe because I needed to look them in the eyes and see if there was anything left to salvage. They showed up with a bag of groceries and a bouquet of grocery store flowers. My dad didn't say much at first, but he did ask Emma about school and told her he remembered her favorite color was green. Something I didn't even realize he knew. Then my mom asked if we could talk privately. She sat on the edge of the couch and told me plainly that she'd been wrong. About Rachel. About me. About the way she'd clung to an image of family that left no room for women who didn't follow the script. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I didn't forgive. But I listened. She asked if we could come over for dinner next week. I told her I'd think about it. I wasn't expecting what came next. The next day Rachel showed up. But this time she wasn't alone. Ava was with her. Emma was in the hallway behind me watching quietly. I didn't say anything. I didn't ask why she came. Rachel knelt down and said, "Go ahead." Ava looked up at Emma and said, "I'm sorry I was mean." I said what I heard my mom say. "I didn't know it would hurt your feelings so bad." Emma just nodded. That was all she needed. Kids don't fake closure the way adults do. Then Rachel looked at me and said something I never expected. "I didn't come here to fix things. I came to tell you I finally get it. You were never the problem. You were just the one none of us could control. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a check, $8,000. She said it was her first payment. Said she knew she owed more but wanted to start. I stared at it. $8,000 from a woman who once called me bitter for asking her to say thank you. I handed it back. Told her to donate it to the women's shelter on Maple Street. She looked confused at first, but then she nodded. She actually nodded. Weeks passed. And for the first time in years, my parents started showing up in a way that didn't involve lectures or guilt trips. My mom came to an OB appointment. My dad helped repaint the nursery. Not with big speeches, just small, quiet efforts. One Friday afternoon, while June and I were setting up the crib, Rachel stopped by again with sandwiches and lemon bars from the bakery we loved as kids. We sat on the floor laughing about how different our lives turned out. Then she looked at my belly and said, "Do you ever wonder what we would have been like if we weren't raised to compete with each other?" I didn't have an answer. I didn't need one. Later that evening, after everyone left, my mom was tucking Emma into bed. She kissed her goodnight, then stood up and turned to me with tears in her eyes. "You're doing everything we never taught you how to do. And you're doing it better than we ever could." I didn't cry. I didn't melt. But I felt something break open, not in pain this time but relief. They were finally showing up. Not as parents I could lean on completely, but as people who were at least trying to grow. And that was enough. Because the next chapter of my life was already on its way. And this time I wasn't going to apologize for how I chose to live it. The heat settled in by late June. I was in my third trimester, running low on sleep, high on heartburn, and still somehow managing to meet deadlines between kicks to the ribs. Emma became my little shadow, always nearby, always touching my belly, always whispering her ideas for baby names. Stella, Muffin, and Commander were the top contenders. I didn't have the heart to tell her I already had a name in mind. Grace. Not for the sound of it, but for what I'd learned to carry. Rachel had stayed consistent as someone like her could be. He came by about once a week, sometimes with Ava, sometimes alone. Her apologies weren't perfect. They were messy, scattered, unsure. But real. She cried once while folding baby clothes with me and admitted that therapy had made her realize how much of her life was built around pleasing our parents, and how she'd taken it out on me. She asked if I could ever forgive her. I didn't answer then. I just handed her another onesie to fold. Meanwhile, my parents had started showing up too. My mom began bringing over food every Tuesday. My dad, who once couldn't be bothered to ask how my job was going, now called to remind me to drink water and check my tire pressure. I wasn't sure if it was guilt, therapy, or both, but something had shifted in them. And I was just tired enough to let it happen without trying to predict how long it would last. Then one Saturday I heard a knock at the door. It was around noon. I opened it expecting Melanie with iced coffee, but it was my parents. No warning. My dad held a small toolbox. My mom had a container of baked ziti. Emma came running to the door yelling, "Grandpa," like she hadn't spent years watching me cry after visits with these same people. I should have felt irritated, cornered, but I didn't. I felt calm, so I let them in. My dad fixed the squeaky kitchen drawer like it had been bothering him for years. My mom asked if we could sit for a bit. I said fine. They didn't lecture. Didn't ask about Rachel. Didn't bring up the past. We just talked. My mom asked about names. My dad asked how Emma liked her summer reading list. For a moment it felt like some alternate version of my life. One where they'd always been like this. But the moment that shook me happened as they were leaving. My mom turned to me at the door and said, "You did this all without us. And I see now we were the ones who couldn't keep up. Not you." I didn't reply. I couldn't. Something about hearing it made my chest feel heavier and lighter at the same time. The next day, Rachel showed up with Ava and a giant stuffed giraffe for the baby. I teased her about it and she said Ava picked it out because giraffes are awkward but kind. We ended up sitting on the floor of the nursery, sorting through hand-me-downs and laughing about all the outfits we used to fight over as teens. Then Rachel got quiet and said, "I think the worst part is how long I believed Mom when she said we weren't supposed to be close. That sisters were just born into competition." I said, "I think the worst part is we believed her." She nodded. We didn't say much else. A week later, everything shifted. It was 2:11 a.m. when I woke up in pain. I sat on the edge of the bed for a few minutes waiting for it to pass, but it didn't. The pain kept pulsing. It was too soon. I was only 35 weeks. Emma was asleep and Melanie was out of town. My husband was working out of state for the next 3 days. I didn't know what to do. My hands were shaking. I didn't want to wake Emma unless I had to. I called my mom. 15 minutes later, she and Rachel were at my door. No questions. No scolding. Just action. My dad stayed with Emma. Rachel helped me into the car. My mom sat beside me the whole ride holding my hand. At the hospital they told me it was false labor. Real contractions but irregular. Stress-induced. I stayed overnight. My mom didn't leave my side. Rachel slept in the waiting room. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't talk about what came next. We just sat there in the dim light of a hospital room, silent, listening to the monitors beep. And I realized something. This was the first time in my life they'd shown up when I didn't have something to offer in return. No favors. No mortgage deals. No emotional labor. Just me. And they came. That's when I knew this family might finally be learning how to love without keeping score. It happened 2 weeks later. I was 37 weeks and 2 days. It was a Tuesday, humid enough to feel like the walls were sweating. I remember Emma had drawn a picture that morning of the baby being born in a spaceship. She said, "It'll be fast and cool and not messy." I told her she was half right. By late afternoon I felt it, the unmistakable heaviness. Not just physical. Something emotional shifted in my chest, like the final thread of the old version of my life had quietly snapped. I paced the apartment. I packed the last few things in my hospital bag that had been sitting half-zipped for weeks. At 2:13 a.m. I woke up with a contraction that made me sit straight up. I timed the next one. Then the one after that. Every 6 minutes. Emma was at Melanie's for the night. It had been planned just in case. My dad had offered to be on call for her. I texted him, then my mom, then Rachel. I half expected silence, delays, excuses. But within 15 minutes, headlights swept across the apartment windows. It wasn't just my parents. Rachel was in the front seat of the car with my mom. My dad jumped out and stayed behind to wait for Emma. No one panicked. No one asked me if I was sure. They just moved. The hospital was ready. The nurses moved quickly. The monitors beeped steadily. My mom stayed on my left, Rachel on my right. There were no speeches, no emotional breakdowns. They didn't bring up the past. They didn't overstep. They just stayed. I labored for 11 hours. I wanted to scream at one point, but something stopped me. Not pride, just clarity. I'd survived worse. I'd done harder things alone. This wasn't pain. This was passage. At 1:14 p.m. Grace was born. She was quiet for half a second, then let out a cry like she was scolding the room. They placed her on my chest. She was small, 6 pounds 9 ounces, but alert. Her eyes were wide open, blinking like she already had opinions. I said her name out loud for the first time and something inside me broke open in the right way. I let them hold her. My mom, Rachel. I didn't cling like I thought I would. Emma came a few hours later with my dad holding a balloon and a drawing that said, "Welcome baby sister." When she saw Grace, she froze. Not from fear. From awe. She said, "She's real. She's here." And then, like it was the most natural thing, she added, "I think I love her already." We took a photo. My mom held Grace. My dad stood next to Emma. Rachel leaned into the frame, and for the first time in our lives, we looked like a unit. Not perfect, not healed, but real. That night, after everyone left and the room dimmed, Emma curled up on the little couch beside me. Grace was asleep in the bassinet. Emma whispered, "Do you think Grace will be nice to me forever?" I said, "She's your sister. She'll love you forever. And annoy you sometimes." She nodded. Like Ava, but better. I smiled but didn't answer. I let her drift off beside me. I stared at the ceiling. At the tiny bundle beside me. And I let myself feel it, all of it. The hurt. The growth. The strange, impossible peace that comes when you finally stop asking to be seen and just live loudly enough that no one can look away. Here's what I know now. You can't force people to love you the right way. But you can choose to stop shrinking around the ones who don't. You can stop explaining your boundaries. You can stop waiting for apologies before you move forward. And sometimes, if you're lucky or just stubborn enough, people come around. Not because they were right, but because you finally taught them how to be. Grace didn't just make me a mother again. He made me new. Not softer. Not colder. Just clear. And that's where this chapter ends. Not with revenge. Not with bitterness. With something stronger. With grace.